Live.
All right. Well, welcome to Ed Therapy. I am Tom Tramolini. I'm here with a ton of people at the ASCD Leader to Leader Extravaganza. It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and our topic today is growth mindset. We have a live Twitter feed going on, hashtag Ed Therapy, and I guess we'll get started off with my colleague, Lavana, and she's going to talk about growth mindset.
Yeah, so there's different types of mindsets. And so Carol Dweck's work focuses really on fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And so the beauty of growth mindset is the belief that you can. And so when it comes down to is those limited beliefs, whether you limit yourself to whether you can or you can't, that's what it really comes down to. So with a fixed mindset, you go into those things like, you know what, this always happens to me. And what's that word that's important there? Is that word always, right? Because that's the limiting word, or I never win. Or how come that line is always so long? It's always happens to me. It keeps coming back to those same words. You're limiting yourself of what really can happen. With a growth mindset, you believe that you can, and no matter what, you have the ability to change it, that belief to change it. And that's where you really start making some of those changes. And that's why we call it growth, because of saying, I'm going to sit in this little circle. You're going to take 1 foot out of that comfort zone and say, you know what, I can do this, I got this. And just by doing that small little piece, you actually trigger the next step, that your circle starts to grow even wider and wider, so just as your mindset does too.
Okay, so you're an author and a presenter, and you're all over the place. So tell us about what you do, and then maybe talk about how, in your own role as a presenter and author, you get at growth mindset.
Oh. Yeah, so we just have an hour, right?
You have 3 minutes, because I'm going to invite up our other co-moderator, Matt Mingle.
Oh, Matt's coming up next.
Super Matt Mingle.
Super Matt Mingle. So I am an author and a speaker, and I have the privilege of working with so many teachers, not only around the country, but also around the world. And as I do so, I work with how the brain learns. So I come from a neuropsychology and neuroscience foundation is what I build upon. And then I take that to say, okay, teachers have so many things they have to do in the classroom, so many demands on their plate, such as differentiation and higher order thinking, and looking at, how do I meet the needs of every student as well as the whole child. And so by doing that, I have strategies in 8 of my books. And that's what the whole foundation is taking, basically the why, which is the science, that neuroscience piece, with, okay, how do I do this, to finally the what is it that you teach, and to bring the students that you teach into all of that. So yes, as I travel, there's a lot of mindset that goes into traveling, because as you know, I do the TSA Macarena pretty much every day, pretty close to it. So there's a lot of mindsets I have shifting I had to do, and I call it's kind of shifty words. You sometimes get really frustrated and you think, okay, wait, does this really matter? And that's that growth mindset of saying, this doesn't really matter. It's not life or death. Things can get better. So I just kind of keep that in mind. And then when I work with teachers, that's one of the things that's so important is getting kids to understand that growth mindset, that they can do it. Don't limit yourself, because if you have the belief you can, you can. And earlier today, one of the things I mentioned was that Henry Ford has that quote that a lot of us have heard, but I don't think it gets old at all. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that's exactly what it comes down to. So, getting teachers to understand that, because I think where our biggest factor becomes down to fear of, am I good enough, or what if I fail? What if you fail? What's the worst thing that happens? Nothing. You grow from it and you move on from there.
Sure. Where's our next, Mr. Mingle? You ready? All right. So I just have one more question for you. So if I'm a veteran teacher, and I really, I'm kind of, really set in my ways, what's one thing that you might help me do so that I might have a different mindset from maybe something that's stagnant or not so growth oriented, versus really, maybe one strategy that I could use to become more growth intended or growth minded?
Mm-hmm. All right. So one of the things I like to share with teachers is the concept of synapse, which is when one neuron fires to another neuron, right? And so I'm going to shake up a little bit of what we call best practice, because I don't think a lot of best practices are actually best practice. So for example, synapse is when you fire the one neuron to the other neuron, but there's a saying in neuroscience, neurons that fire together, wire together. So the more that connects, like think of your phone number. So the more that connects, you recall it like this. But if you change your address recently, you have a much harder time recalling that, right? So what happens, we typically do with homework, is we say practice makes, and if you said perfect, you're wrong. Yeah. How you practice it is how it ends up being. So for example, if we send home, let's say 25 math problems, because that's a best practice, they have to practice it. Neurons that fire together, wire together. If my students go home and they come back and they did it wrong, You just reinforce that connection 25 times incorrectly. The one thing teachers don't have is time. What you have to now do is undo that learning. Neuroplasticity, thankfully we can, but it takes a lot of time. So instead, getting your kids doing it right, like for example, foul shots. If I went out shot foul shots all day long, I'm not going to get any better. But if someone came along to me and said, hey, Lavana, here's the problem. Where the elbow goes, the ball flows. Bring your elbow in. Where the elbow goes, the ball flows. Now I have a little bit more guidance. So when teachers have this understanding of how neuroscience does impact your world and really what is good for our kids to be doing and not doing, that totally shakes it up. And I have so many teachers come up to me and go, Lavana, I've been doing this for years. I'm like, well, guess what? So was I. So I think it's just important to understand that and have that mindset that there's a reason. It's not somebody coming in to make your life harder. There's a reason behind why we do what we do. And the bottom line is we always want to do is what is best for kids. And if we have that to the forefront, then the rest is easy.
Well, then I guess we know how to talk to our New York Knicks at home because they're awful and they miss every foul shot.
That's the problem right there.
They need a growth mindset, but they're growing in the wrong way.
Yeah, they can do it. It's to me, it's perfect. Practice makes perfect. If you look at the best athletes in the world, they have 4 or 5 coaches themselves. The best athletes, but yet they have coaches. They have people who assist them. So it's the same thing with us, supporting each other in education and really helping us to fine tune our techniques.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to have our co-moderator, Matt Mingle, who is the incoming president to New Jersey ASCD, and Matt's going to join us. Come on in, Matt.
All right. You going to stay on here with us?
I'll stay on here with you. So I'm going to ask you questions and put you on the hot seat.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. So, Matt, tell us about what you do in New Jersey, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions about curriculum, because that's really your area, and talk about growth mindset.
Okay. Well, my role, as Tom already said, I'm rising as currently the president-elect of New Jersey ASCD, but what pays the bills is being the director of curriculum and instruction in the Madison Public Schools, where I've been going into my 3rd year now. And I love this topic because it really ties into what we all believe in and what we want for our teachers and our students. So I'm happy to have a room full of ASCD members and leaders here joining us tonight.
So one of the things that impresses me most about the work that Matt does is his work with professional development and how he's very innovative and creative in getting teachers to buy into this idea of how do we get better for kids. So I don't know, maybe Matt, if you could talk just a little bit about what you've done to kind of inspire teachers to get them to think differently and grow, especially teachers who, might, want to do too much or sometimes maybe not, they don't know how to get to that next step.
Okay. One of the first things that I did when I got into the district was change the model of how we deliver professional development. So we had been a place where the first day of school, we bring in a high-priced keynote speaker. They talk about something that we never come back to again the rest of the year. And everybody kind of feels like, that was just a waste of my time. And we replaced it with something we call the Madison Teacher Academy, which is a teacher training teacher model where we look to the expertise of the staff that we already have in the district. We allow them to propose topics that they think are really important, and then they teach them and they facilitate the discussions themselves. And that can be anything from a short one-time thing about a new tech tool, how they can use Edmodo in the classroom, to something more sustained, like a lesson study, where we have a group of teachers working for 4, 5, 6 months on designing one lesson, observing each other's classrooms and really working as a team to build something. And that's been a tough transition. So for some people, taking on the ownership of running the PD has been a struggle. And we've really, I think, worked hard, and we're still in the process of trying to help our teachers understand that they are the experts and they have plenty to offer to their colleagues. And hopefully that's starting to resonate with our staff.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, tell me, I'm just going to shift a little bit to school leaders. Is there a different way or a similar way in which you think works for school leaders in the same capacity?
That's a great question, and one that we're still kind of working through. What we've tried to help our school leaders see, especially this summer, is that wouldn't it be great for us to model what we say to our teachers about being lifelong learners, in the sense, so we have these Teacher Academy courses. What's wrong with a principal or the superintendent signing up to attend a PD session with the kindergarten teacher about whatever topic she feels is really important. And especially when it comes to technology integration. So we, in September, in October, November, more realistically, will be a one-to-one district where we'll have a Chromebook in the hands of all of our students, K through 12, available. And it's our leaders who are most, I'd say, reluctant or nervous about that implementation. And so we're trying to make sure that they get out there and also see themselves as learners. And they don't have to be the ones that know the answers. They don't have to be standing up at a faculty meeting telling everybody else what the right thing to do is. And I think that really ties into this growth mindset idea.
Great. Do you have any questions you want to ask Matt? Throwing it on the spot.
How do I grow this?
I did have to change my Twitter profile picture today because I was told it didn't look anything like me. I don't know where
It is
came
true.
from, but- So
It is
I did
true.
adjust that today.
Is it? No, I guess, and in your role as a leader, what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to helping other educators kind of overcome some of those obstacles, or even some things that you hear them say that you're like, man, you're really limiting what you're thinking or what you believe can be done.
Right.
And I believe personally that's a huge trickle effect throughout, whoever you come in contact with, you're sharing that same good or bad thing.
Mhm.
So have you faced any certain issues? And of course, I don't hear any names, but anything along those lines.
I think for me, it's to remember, again, back to modeling, that we tend to go to the same people all the time. So when we have something new to roll out, we go to those 5 teachers that are always the ones that do it. And I think we do the same thing at the district leadership level. We know, okay, I can call this principal and it's going to get done, or I can call this supervisor or whatever, but really believing in the entire team and that we all have to take whatever the next step is so that we're continually growing, and recognizing that there are things for me to work on too. There are things for Tom to work on. We all have something that we should be working on, and to be kind of transparent about that. So as an example of something I was really excited to see, this past year, our high school principal, we were dealing with some morale issues in the high school, and he took, I think, a pretty big risk by sending out an anonymous survey to the staff, asking them to give him very frank and honest feedback about what he should be doing differently to change the culture of the school. And I think that was, not only did he get feedback he could use, and we could all use, but he signaled, I think, to the staff, I'm here to learn and grow, and we're all working together, which is wonderful.
And I think that's an important piece, is that to model that you're open to these kinds of things and willing to take risks yourself. So by him stepping out there, he opened up that door for others to go, hey, wait a minute, maybe I could do this too.
Absolutely.
So it goes back to, either you model something good or you model something bad. It's your choice. And I think that's fantastic. And I hope he got some accolades or something for taking such a risk. Because sometimes, are we going to fail? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what we do with that failure that I think is so inspiring and such. So.
Well, certainly it's a move from the fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a big leap. I think that a lot of school leaders feel. I know I have felt a lot of times. I don't know about nervous, but really concerned about. Well, if you're trying to charge on the front and you don't have anybody charging with you, and that's always a problem. And a really great way to get at that is an anonymous survey or some way of aspiring feedback. So I think that's outstanding. All right, I think we're ready for our next guest.
Absolutely.
So you want me to?
It's all you, sure.
It's all me.
You're great at the questions.
Oh, I'm great. All right.
Better than at the answers.
I have to work on that.
Poor Tom.
So who are we bringing up first?
Oh, Dan. I want the Godfather. Dan Callahan. I want Dan Callahan. I'm bringing the Godfather of Ed Camp.
Yes. And you should see this room is packed. It's awesome. It's
Oh,
awesome.
hi Dan. This is Dan Callahan.
Shifted because he was a little over
Oh,
on the edge.
Oh yeah,
Very
good. Good.
all right. So this is Dan. Dan is, from what I've been told, the Godfather and the creator of
One of.
Ed Camp.
One of.
The creator in this room. The creator
In this room, yes. Yeah,
of Ed Camp. So tell us about what Ed Camp is, and then we're going to shift to growth mindset.
sure. Yes, so Ed Camp is a form of professional development, which is completely driven by the participants. So everybody shows up on the morning of an Ed Camp, and there's a completely blank schedule board, which is filled in by the people who are attending. So it's completely focused on what are the passions, the interests, and the questions of the people who show up that day, as opposed to being determined by some random high mucky mucks from somewhere who decide that these are the things that we're going to learn about that day.
Cool.
No offense to the people who are on the ASCD conference organizing committee, because I had a really great time at the conference earlier this year. I had good session karma. I went to good things.
So how might we use EdCamp to really promote an idea of a growth mindset, fail forward, kind of make things, less stagnant, get out of that, rut?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the key things for EdCamp that differentiates it from a lot of conferences is that it really should be, all the sessions should really be conversation based. And I find for people who it's their first time at an unconference like EdCamp, that's new and kind of unfamiliar territory. So they've got to get over the mental hurdle of, this doesn't look like the other kinds of professional development that I've been to before. They don't know what we're going to talk about yet. They're going to expect that we're all going to be involved in the conversation. And then they're encouraging me to leave a room if whatever's happening isn't working for me at that time. Like that's not what most professional development people are used to is going to. So in order to really get the most out of your day, you need to be in a growth mindset. The fact that like, I'm in a room and it's not working for me, the fixed mindset is, well, I'm going to stay here because I don't want to appear rude and whatever. And we tell people, like, you're not rude if you leave. You're just recognizing that you're doing the best thing for you.
So could you incorporate that into like a classroom lesson where you might have stations where students are presenting to other students in an EdCamp type of?
Yeah, I know there are teachers all over the place who have done, full-on EdCamp days with their students. It can be, really powerful thing to do with any group of people. I've been working a lot in the past year in my job that gives me money because I like to, support my family, in helping a lot of schools and districts incorporate the EdCamp model into their professional development. And it was actually really cool one time because I was in a school, Newton High School in Massachusetts, Newton North High School. Not Newton South.
Is there some kind of rift there?
Yeah, there's the rival schools. And the entire school district was spending the whole school year on the growth mindset as the theme for all of their professional development work. And so I helped them do an EdCamp session for a staff meeting. And I went to this one session, which was a group of people talking about how they were trying to use what they had been learning about for the growth mindset in their own parenting at home. And I can't think of a higher compliment to a school's professional development than people are thinking about how to use it in their own personal lives. That's not something you hear about very often. Most of the time, people don't even use the professional development in their own classrooms, let alone their actual personal lives.
Interesting.
That's great. Well, Dan, I just want to thank you because I went to EdCamp Orange, which is in Orange County, Florida.
Nice. Yeah.
That was my first experience. Yes, Alina is one of the people that helped with all of that.
Nice.
And that was my first experience, and I wandered in thinking, fixed mindset,
Mhm.
right? A little bit of, not used to this. What is this? Is it valuable? And then I left there going, oh my gosh, like it was awesome. And so I'm going to EdCamp Tampa Bay.
Very
I'm
cool.
excited about that. So I just wanted to make sure I thank you for that. And it's funny because when you're aware of a growth mindset, and I'm a pretty positive person, but there's times you still find yourself going, I don't know, like I push.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I know I said in the chat going on right now is, I think we have to recognize that people are complex, right? So like we're all both fixed and growth in different things at different times, depending on what the situation is. Like I'm like all growthy growth when it comes to my teaching practice, but I'm like fix when it comes to, like running or something like that.
Somebody please tweet that growthy growth. I love that. That is great. So how do you deal with people? I'm thinking they're probably a little bit past that hurdle, but when they come to an EdCamp, how do you deal with those that are still kind of I'm not so sure about this. It's a little bit too different for me.
Yeah, well, fortunately, and the nice part is, especially because EdCamps are becoming more common, we've got like people who just like are willing to go out and sell it for you, you know,
Yes.
to some degree.
Mass momentum.
Right. But you know, it's a lot of for an organizer. I think there's a lot of prep work that goes into setting expectations with people for the day. So you know, like you shouldn't be springing what is on them right when they show up, because then it's going to be whoa, like defenses are going to spring up, sort of thing. So you know, like we send out emails ahead of time and put stuff up on the blog and make sure they know, like, here's the format. We know it's going to be different. It might be a little scary. It's going to be okay.
Right.
And then lots of support. You know, at this point, you know, there are a lot of people who have been to many ed camps who are, you know, very glad to take on sort of a mentor role to the new people who are attending an event. So it's about building an ad hoc community to some degree. And, you know, whether you're, you know, in that moment there or you're in a school, you know, it's relationships and community that will help people move forward. If you feel like you're on your own, then it's, you know, it's not gonna, you're just gonna be like, okay, I gotta protect myself.
All right. So come in maybe a fixed mindset, a little bit of just unsure about it because it's something different. Not, you know, a lot of people don't like change. It's one of the biggest things that we fear is change. So coming and doing something like that. But from my experience and from what I've heard from all over, and the fact that you have such a mass momentum, to me, you have a lot of raving fans. So it has to feel really good knowing that this is how you started.
We're calling you Godfather.
Yeah, when I stop and think about it for a moment, it's like
A little overwhelming.
yeah, because we never in a million years would have imagined that
Right.
there'd be so many people who would love this thing that we just tried.
Yeah.
Well,
Excellent.
well, that's fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Godfather.
Great to meet you.
I prefer Emperor.
Emperor Dan.
Who's next? Leslie, you want to come up?
Yay.
Matt, it's your turn.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Lavana's like superstar.
No. I'm waiting for myself to shuffle out. Hi.
All right, I'm back over here on the camera. We have a brand new emerging leader.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about your background and what brings you to this place.
absolutely. So I'm Leslie Prawley-Keene, and I taught social studies 6th through 12th grade for several years, but now I'm an instructional technology consultant, and I serve, 50-something districts in Northwest Iowa with my awesome team.
So moving into a coaching position from the classroom requires a whole lot of openness and flexibility. Talk a little bit about what that transition was like.
Absolutely. So I think becoming a coach takes so much coaching in itself, right? So just understanding the different ways to question people so that you're not telling them what to do, right? Nobody responds to being told what to do. At least I don't. It's the best way to get me to do the opposite, right? But helping them ask questions and prompt that thinking to really get them there themselves so that they're able to really embrace that and take ownership in the idea. That's been a great, we're in the city. We're not in small town Iowa.
Growth mindset.
Let's expand.
It's different, and
not
I
bad. It's
accept
okay.
it, and I'll be better for it, right? No, but really getting people to buy into that thing on their own so that they take ownership and are excited and passionate about it is something that had to be coached for me as well.
So when you work with other coaches, do you find that sometimes they're coming in with the experience plays a huge part in how, you know, our background and our experience plays that huge part in how we think and we come into new experiences. So what are some techniques or things that you do to help any coaches that you deal with that come in with that fixed mindset and to get them to understand that, okay, I know this is, you know, something that you're worried about or concerned, not sure how to handle maybe, and then how do you take that into that growth with them? What are some coaching techniques or ideas?
So one of my favorite things is actually one of the people on my team is Scott McLeod. So I get the privilege of working with him along with the rest of my amazing team. But one of the things he said to me long before I worked with him is think of it as a pilot. And I take that into everything that I do. So if you think of it as a pilot, you have a built-in level of security for failure, right? People expect it to be something that you're going to learn and grow from and improve upon. So when I talk to my teachers, when I talk to other coaches, it's all about how can we take this and embrace it from the get-go as something we're going to build on and take improvements as we go and afterwards. So pilot, keyword.
Well, you made me think of, so I fly a lot, right? But one thing I didn't know until more recently is that, you know, when you go from one city to the next, which I knew that part, right? So you go from one city to the next, but I always thought that the plane just goes straight there. But and most of the time, like 90-some%, I can't remember the exact percentage, the plane is actually off course when you're flying. So when you come in for the landing, that's when you finally actually are on course, is for that final landing piece. And so if we think of life and being that way, that oftentimes we're off course. We know where we want to be, and we know that's where we're headed. But when something comes and kind of sways us a little bit off course, what's our reaction to that? Am I going to let this derail me and totally end up in a totally different city than I planned? And in life, a different spot, or am I going to say, okay, that's okay, let me shift this a little bit and turn that so I get back on course? So when you just mentioned pilot, I kind of thought of that.
I love that as a visual, and it made me think of, we just had Adam Bello come to our Iowa Tech conference, and the most tweeted thing of the entire week, I think, was he said, live your life in beta, and it's always in that continual mode of improvement. And so that's sort of, just that veering off course, and it's always something I'm working toward. And I think that was the number one takeaway. I mean, everyone, we broke the internet, right? So good job, Adam Bello.
That's great. Well, congratulations on being
Thank you.
selected as an emerging leader. And I know, just how many other new emerging leaders do we have in the room right now? Is anybody?
Oh,
So
wow.
you can't see,
Wow.
but I'd say that was about all of them. So that's great. We have lots
That's
of.
why they're here. They're leaders.
That's right. That's right. So congratulations and,
Thank
and
you.
welcome.
Thank
It's
you.
a great group. Our next person who's going to come up and join us is Ben Schuldner, who didn't exactly know that, but no, he knew that. So as Ben gets up here, we're almost at the halfway point already of Ed Therapy, which flies by all the time, but especially when you're managing this live broadcast at the same time. I don't even know what's happening in the chat. I'm sure it's wonderful, but I have no idea. So we're at the halfway point, and thanks to Ali Rodman, who is moderating for us tonight, and Chris Henkin, who's doing it back at home. She's busy moderating, so she didn't get to celebrate with us. To make sure we can make everything happen, and to all the ASCD staff who I think took a pretty big leap of faith too by letting this be a part of the agenda, to have this in place.
Thank you, ASCD. Woo.
So we have Ben here, who's the newest member of the ASCD Board of Directors, was an Outstanding Young Educator Award recipient, and is now, the title is very impressive, so we have to say. Can you say it better than we can?
I'm the Distinguished Lecturer of Education Leadership.
Distinguished lecturer.
I know, my mother really likes that. She can tell all her friends. It's fantastic.
She's like, that's my boy.
Exactly. I'm just completely embarrassed, but it's okay.
So now we just embarrass you for
That's fine.
an extra 10 people.
Hello, interwebs.
But it'll be on YouTube, so you can
Forever
share
and
them.
ever.
Yes, that I will do, and then she'll share it with her all her mushboka, but it'll be good.
So we know you had a very interesting and exciting opportunity as a young principal in New York City, which I think feeds into this whole conversation and really being willing to put yourself out there and do new things. Can you talk a little bit about what that was all about?
Well, first, I want to thank you guys for putting this up. I am really amazed by how many people are a part of this conversation, both physically and through the interwebs, as it were. I'll say this. For me to talk about growth mindset, I would say just read Dweck's work. She's an absolute genius, and that she is the one that really does this. For me, I was honored and lucky enough to be able to start a school in 2003 when I was 26 with a group of just incredible educators. And, just the sheer fact that we were starting the school, you have to have a growth mindset. The idea that you can create something, the thing that a high school isn't fixed. New York City has schools that are literally hundreds of years old. The idea that you can come in and help create something, work with the community, work with faculty, work with students, you want to be open. And I think for me, really, it comes down to a sense of humbleness. If you really know that you can learn from others, that you can experience with others, that you can grow together. That's what it's all about. And you need to be humble, because anything that you know might be your vantage point, but not necessarily, the student next to you, the faculty next to you, the principal or school down the street. And I think as long as you're always open, you can learn. And we were just so lucky. And it allowed us to take crazy risks. We started an acre organic farm in the middle of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. People thought we were totally nuts, and we probably were, but we were able to have every Wednesday we had a farmer's market. We accepted food stamps and EBT, so the community was really involved. It was just this kind of fascinating thing, but everybody thought, what are you doing? well, let's just be open to it. Let's just see what's best for kids, what's best for the community. Another example that we use all the time was sadly our school was in a neighborhood that had some violence issues, and the closest bus stop was 3 blocks away, and it was in the heart of a really kind of tough place. And our kids, at least once a week, were going to the bus stop and getting mugged, getting jumped, getting harassed. So if you just think to yourself, well, that's the way it is, well, that's the way it is. Well, why not say, let's just move the bus stop? And so we created a bus stop across the street from the school. And so that way, none of our kids ever got jumped again, because we could control that bus stop. But that's only going to happen if you really open up and say to yourself, things aren't fixed. There's other ways of thinking. Let's bring everybody to the table, let everybody have a voice, and let's figure out what we can do to make people better.
Great. When you think back to that time, because now you're not in that position anymore.
Right, I'm a
you're the
distinguished lecturer.
right?
I mean, come on, principal.
which is apparently the path to being a distinguished lecturer.
Fantastic.
When you think back to your first days, you were 26 years old, you said, taking over, starting a high school from scratch, and you, if I remember correctly, got to build your own staff.
Yeah.
What kinds of questions did you ask those potential staff members that gave you a sense that they were the right people to build this school with?
You really want to work with me? I mean, that was, but no, I mean, I think the first question is really about why do you want to do this? And if it's to be with the community and learn and grow and be a part of something, that's it. And later on, one of the questions that we always asked was, if students in your class failed, if students in your class didn't get something, where does the onus lie? And you would have teachers go, well, the kids didn't do their work, and they didn't show up, and well, they didn't care, they were lazy. And you go, okay, thanks so much. The teacher says, well, it was on me. I need to work harder. I need to figure out a way to work with the students and with the school and with the faculty. That showed us that they were willing to learn, and that is true growth mindset, is that whatever happens in the classroom, I can be part of that. I am responsible. And when you see that from faculty, when you go in and you interview folks and they say, no, I'm going to be responsible, I'm going to learn, I'm going to figure out what's wrong with my faculty, with my students, with my families, that's the person you want. And if they don't show that, if they're going to blame others, if they're going to blame the community or the kids or the lack of resources, those are all legit. But if that's what the response is, that person's not going to have that growth mindset and isn't going to be that kind of team player that you want in your community.
Have you had a time, and I don't want to put you on the spot personally,
No.
right? But have you had a time in your own life?
Yeah, right.
I'm
I can't just leave. I mean,
And there goes Ben Schultz.
That's right. Good night, Cleveland.
Because I'm asking it anyway. No, really. But a time in your own life when you felt, whether it was something you weren't sure about doing, weren't sure if you could do it, you had the ability. 26 years old to open up a school. Holy cow, I can't even imagine that. And that may have been one of the times, or maybe different times, but where you kind of reframed it in your head and said, what? But what if? So do you mind sharing something that comes to mind?
Sure. I mean, look, I think everybody questions what they do, almost on a daily basis. And it's really about, having a sense of self, but also being humble and being gracious, and know that there are people out there that are a part of your life and that are going to support you. And so, I mean, every day, coming here, sitting here in front of a camera, I don't know who the hell's listening to this or what's going on, and it's unclear if I really understand where their tweet is, but all of this stuff is, Matt's a good friend and I trust him. And so I respect him, and he asked me to come and do this. It's great. And I think just being open to trust in others and to care about others and to really say to yourself, it's okay to fail. It's okay to do something, maybe not to be so good at it, but then if you like it, great, you're going to continue to learn. And if you don't, you can go figure something else. But I think it always comes down to this sense of being gracious and having gratitude and being humble. And with that, you're able to do whatever. And hopefully in your mind, it's about how to support whatever it is that you're doing. Here we do education. So it's to support kids, support communities, support families. And, that's powerful. And if you mess up, you hopefully, mess up with goodwill and with, in good intentions, and you brush yourself off and get back on the horse. And, and that's what a lot of Dweck's work really is about, is how do you do that? So.
Well, I think you hit on two key things that I want to make sure people grasp. And that's because it's something that I've made a priority in my life, knowing that life is short and I want to live it to the fullest. But gratitude, you mentioned, right? So having gratitude, and even if it's, honoring that by recognizing what that is and saying to yourself, I mean, a lot of times we walk around like, oh, I'm so grateful for this. But to actually stop for a moment and actually take that on, and what specifically am I grateful for? And that can kind of shift different things. And then the second thing you said is talk about people who are around you, like you trust Matt. I don't, but you trust Matt, right? So
You're the one sitting next to him. I mean,
It was a rough seat.
That's right.
that is being recorded, right?
Tom is going to be back up here in
That's
just a
right,
minute.
exactly.
no. So, but in my own life, as hard as it sometimes has been, I've had to, I'll call them weed people out, because it's such a negativity that they aren't willing to change, aren't willing to broaden, and everything they do, it's negative, negative, negative. And that has an impact on a lot of people. And that's something you took into account when you're hiring folks, that you're making sure that they had that mindset to begin with, So I think it's just important, again, being grateful for what you do have. Don't focus on all those negatives, because that's easy to do. And the brain kind of wants to go there at times. But being able to break that pattern and come back to the positive, and then make sure those you're around.
So, I mean, I agree. Although the one thing I would say is, you'll find a time in your life where you are surrounded by people that don't necessarily believe what you believe in, and that sometimes people will take that as negativity, or that they're being a roadblock.
Right.
What's really important is you understand where people are coming from, and that maybe it's you, and then maybe that you're the one that doesn't understand or have that conceptualization. And so when they're seen as negative by you because they're in your way, maybe they should be in your way. Maybe you're actually making a mistake. And so I think that when you're hiring, certainly you want somebody that's open and has that growth mindset and really does take the onus on themselves. But when you find yourself in a room, in a family sometimes, with folks that you might perceive as negative or doing something that's against you, you have to step back and say, well, where are they coming from? Because their voice and their vantage point is a legitimate place, and that knowing and understanding folks will hopefully get you to sense that there is good amongst them and that they're doing something right, and that you can find a way. So I wouldn't say that, certainly to weed people out there. I would never use that language. I mean, I think it's really about finding what's great about everybody and figuring out a way to use their skills. And, if they're in a school, they want to be there for some reason. And so finding that way and finding a way to access that brilliance that they have is really super important. But certainly when you're hiring and when you have a choice, then you want people who are as open as can be and are willing to kind of struggle with you and to kind of really work with you.
It's important to have people who are going to push you and challenge you. I agree entirely on that, because that's part of that whole growth and being open. Otherwise, you are stuck.
As the ancient Greeks said, right? The smartest man is the man who says he knows nothing. And so if you can really believe that in its true sense of that word, which is, hey, I can always learn, that can be incredibly powerful.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben, for taking a leap of faith with us.
It's
and
my pleasure.
camera.
I appreciate it. This is really wonderful. And
You still have 20 minutes to send your first tweet out.
I will say I actually sent a tweet yesterday. I'm learning these things. I'm getting there. So. Oh my God! As my mother would say, I'm cavelling. It's terrific. So anyway, thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Ben. We're gonna transfer it back to Tom.
Jessica.
Yay.
You need some music for your transitions.
Yeah,
That's
well,
true.
this is the first time. All right, so we're back. I'm back.
You're back.
Lavana, you
Hi,
run the
welcome back.
whole thing.
Yeah.
All right, Jessica, you're next.
Hello.
You get to introduce who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there. I'll try.
Super. All right, I'm Jessica Bond. I'm a principal in North Carolina at Gibsonville Elementary School, and it's exciting to be here and be a part of this process.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you.
So talk to us about your school and maybe growth mindset with how you want to get your teachers to think about inspiring kids to have a growth mindset versus that stagnant kind of.
Yeah, I think as a school principal, I have to focus on the growth mindset in terms of teachers and developing teachers. And so my focus is on developing teachers to be able to have the capacity to have a growth mindset. So you have to create the collective capacity amongst your staff and set the stage for change to take place before change takes place. Otherwise, people get stagnant in that fixed mindset. So My job as a leader, I think, is to create the stage or the situation in which change can take place. And so for me, that means cultivating the components that lead to the growth mindset in all of my teachers. So I have to think about the teachers as whole teachers. And we were talking today in an earlier ASCD discussion about the whole child, and we talked about the whole teacher. So I think in terms of developing that growth mindset, it relates to developing the whole teacher as well. So in order for change to take place, in order for teachers to feel the ability to step out there and be comfortable with doing things differently and doing things in a way that hasn't been done before, you have to first create the stage in which they believe in themselves and they're okay if they fail. They're okay if we don't get it right the first time. And to do that, you have to have the whole teacher. So you have to have them to feel that they're supported and challenged and engaged in all the things that make up the whole child as well. So I think of the growth mindset as a juxtaposition of creating a whole teacher and creating the capacity for change within a school.
So I know throughout the year, we all start out pumped up at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
right? And revved up, got new kids, new things going on, classrooms being redesigned or, decorated. And as the year goes on, you start to come down a little bit, and especially January, February can be some of those toughest months because it stretches without a holiday. So
Right.
how do you deal with that kind of a culture when you know that those moments are going to be coming naturally?
Right.
And so kind of how do you help your staff or your teachers get more pumped up and keep that same mindset going forward?
Well, I think that you have to also focus on yourself as a leader, and you have to focus on what you're feeling, because a lot of times as a leader, what you're feeling, your staff will feel as well. And then your teachers will feel, and then your students will feel. So you have to focus on if you're in what we call the dark days of February. Anybody else? So in those days of February, where it seems like the long months, you have to really focus on, are we doing things just because we're doing them the way that we've always have done them, as in a fixed mindset, or are we doing things the way that's going to help us grow? Are we taking risks? Are we stepping out there and really adopting the growth mindset? So you have to be willing to, in the middle of everything, in the middle of chaos, in the middle of so many balls that you're juggling, be able to step back and say, am I still pushing myself, or have I fallen back into that trap of complacency?
Right.
And so when you get to that point of being comfortable with being able to evaluate yourself in the moment, in that situation, I think you can really move forward in being able to reflect and adopt a growth mindset.
Great.
When you go and hire teachers, especially teachers right out of school, your pre-service, they're going to graduate. Is there something you look for in a teacher that might really have that mindset of, growth versus just kind of hitting the ground and going, okay, what do I do next? You want them to hit the ground running, right?
Right. Yeah, there's always been this discussion of with itness, right, in education, which is this intangible quality that, people don't really know how to define. But I look for someone who can think on their feet and be innovative at the same time, as well as thinking and reflecting personally about whether they are doing the best that they can in every single situation. So there's not a real fixed way to define that. It's more about looking for people that are innovative thinkers and respectful of the learning process. Yeah.
Did you want to ask?
No, go ahead.
So when you go and look for those innovative things and you try to see how people think on their feet, how might you go about getting a person like that when they come into your school? How do you get them to interact maybe with a staff member that might not be so
Right.
really into being so innovative and creative and thinking on their feet?
I think that that's where you build in mentoring, and you also build in, buddy systems with teachers. But in the way that you structure your school as a principal, you really have to adopt that growth mindset yourself. And that's the core and the foundation for being able to help teachers understand that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to do things differently, and it's okay if we don't get it right the first time. And so by cultivating that mindset in all of your teachers, the newer teachers who are a little more reluctant are going to eventually come on board, because most of the time the reluctant teachers are the teachers who are just afraid to fail. They just don't want to look bad. And it's not that they're trying to be difficult. It's just that they need a little more time to adjust to the change process. And so I think if you're partnering teachers together for the sake of the benefit of all students, it can work school-wide.
Great.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's a challenge for all new teachers coming in. The majority of them, I shouldn't say all, the majority is coming in and feeling a way to the whole new environment. And again, am I going to fit in here? Am I not going to fit in? What if my philosophy is different? What if I tried this? This is the way I was learned, how I learned. And there's so much that's being thrown at them that coming in, that's a huge intimidation. So earlier when we mentioned the fact that change is so hard for a lot of people,
Right.
That's huge change, a new person coming in. So have you seen that?
Absolutely. And I think that when you're cultivating change in a building, you have to first have the teachers feel supported. Second, you have to have the teachers feel that they understand the need for change and the reason for change, right? Because if you don't have those two things, you've lost them. They're not going to buy in.
Right.
And so in order to move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, you have to be able to have those things at the foundation. You have to have them feeling supported, and you have to have them feeling that they know the reason for the change. And then you can move forward and create the space for the actual change to take place.
So kind of that why is important. Why?
Yeah,
we're doing it this
absolutely.
way.
Otherwise, I'm just doing something because you told me to.
Right.
Do you ever see people in your organization that want to just change too fast and have too much of a growth mindset?
I think the culture of education today kind of supports that theory. But yeah, of course I see that. But at the same time, there's value in reflecting in between all the steps. So that means that there's value in doing it at an appropriate pace. Sometimes that's faster, sometimes that's slower. It just depends on what the state of that school system or that school is, and what type of change is being implemented.
Cool. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, nice to have your
All right.
perspective.
All right. Well, I think we have time for one more.
Yes.
I think we should have a
think so, too.
volunteer. Celebrity guest volunteer, or we're just going to pick.
Unless they get voluntold.
I would love to see somebody from mentoring.
Oh,
It would be
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. All right.
Yay. Can you get
We'll
through?
make some room for Richard. All right. All right. So this is Richard, and Richard is an expert on mentoring and induction. And Richard, go ahead. Tell them about who you are and what you do. And
Okay, I've been a member of AACD for many, many years, and had the honor and pleasure of working with Tom's district in New Jersey a few years ago, helping set up a new teacher induction program through some professional development, and it was a very good experience and very professional activities. And so right now I work in some of the Chicago Public Schools, CPS, working in the mentor capacity with new teachers and student teachers.
tell us when you go about building a mentor program, and I know you have some publications, when do you talk to mentors about building a growth mindset with teachers? Do you do it right off the bat? Is it something you build over time? How do you address that with mentors?
It depends on how much time I have before the workshop. And sometimes, like with your district, it worked really well because I set up the activities a year ahead, talked with your person in charge of the mentorship program, and talking about the mindset of looking at the new paradigm. not looking at the old set of ways that mentoring was done as like a big brother, big sister. Here's a buddy for you. Call me if you have any problems or concerns, and we'll see you in June. So it was good to have the opportunity to work ahead of time with your particular person, Tabitha in this case, to get the mindset going. But also she had the mindset to move forward, and with your support and backing, it worked out really well.
So would you say that if you're going to build so Jessica talked a little bit about hiring the teacher,
right,
and getting the mindset in a place where you want when they come out of maybe a pre-service program. Would you say that the mentor is critical to helping the teacher continue that growth mindset as they are in their first year teaching or second year teaching and beyond?
Well, a good example of the mindset is if they're a brand new fresh teacher, usually they are quite open for the changing their ideas and their mindset. I have found that in the mentoring practice that usually a one-year teacher experience going to a new school district often brings with them the one-year experience. This must be it. This is what I'm used to. This is the mindset, the standard, and the form. So a lot of ways to mentor a first-year teacher from another district or another building can be the most difficult because they only have 1 year of experience and they have established their mindset. So that can be quite challenging for the mentor to work with a teacher of 1 or 2 years experiences versus fresh out of college.
I know you've worked all around the world with different mentoring programs and different school districts. Is it easier usually to get the teachers in this mindset of improvement, growth, or is it maybe more difficult to get the administrators on board? What are the barriers that you see?
Actually, it has to be, start from growth within the school district. Who wants the mentorship program to start with? Is it top down or is it coming from the teachers? In the school district I worked in for many years, it actually came from the teachers themselves. We need to have a mentorship program. We need to have our new teachers supported by the staff, again, more than a big brother, big kind of sister. When I was first starting to teach, we never heard of mentorship programs. In a lot of ways, you would find your own person, your own friend to help out with your particular area. But in the newer phases, there's like several different phases of mentoring programs going on. I have found that the new teachers are demanding to have a mentor. In fact, in many of the job interviews, a lot of the student teachers I work with will actually say, ask at the interview, do I get a mentor? Will I actually be working with somebody that will help me through the ropes? One thing I experimented with in my district is we actually tried 1 year, it worked pretty well, was 2 mentors, one in the curricular area and one that had the support as a personality, friendship to the big brother, big sister, which is also critical. And that person often was not on the same grade level and maybe in a different area because they could feel more warm and welcome to go to somebody who was not on their same team or their department chair. That's probably one of the worst combinations. The department chair is your mentor. Because you might want to ask them for curricular activities, but to say something like, gee, it's the day before Thanksgiving, should I make a doctor's appointment or not? Is it okay to call in sick? Well, you wouldn't ask your department chair per se, but you might ask another friendly or big brother or big sister in a case like that. So we experimented for a little bit and it turned out pretty good where we assigned 2 mentors, a curricular expert, which often new teachers will seek out anyway, or having somebody that's more of the big brother, big sister, gee, I was thinking of doing this. What do you think I should do? Well, don't ask the principal. That's the last person you want to ask about that. So you want to have a go-to person you can ask those kinds of personal questions.
If there was one thing that you could ask our Secretary of Education about supporting with mentoring and maybe in a, because what
Other
we've
than
seen,
funding.
well, besides funding, yeah, right. Well, we've seen a lot of,
Always.
one thing in the state of New Jersey, and I'm sure it's relative in other states, is we've seen such a focus on testing and accountability and this push for kids to perform at the standard in each grade. We've seen a lot of schools cut back on student teachers, and they're more reluctant, and teachers are more reluctant to give way in their classrooms to student teachers because their test scores could be attached to how students perform on a given set of assessments,
right,
with their overall evaluation. So, is there something that you would suggest to Secretary Duncan or to our policymakers that might get at that, where maybe we're softening the assessment system or softening something in the system, but using growth mindset instead to foster a better educational system?
Well, one thing as a side note, in Illinois, our Illinois State Board of Education is considering not permitting student teachers during the spring quarter. They just don't want them in school, period. Because of assessment, testing period, and so forth. And a lot of my student teachers have often been told you can't even enter the buildings or go into school during assessment periods. So what I would ask Mr. Duncan about that is it's kind of hard to ask him to do any kind of federal level of education requirements stating that student teachers should have access. But I would like to ask him that student teachers will be given more freedom and flexibility to work as a student teacher, as a co-professional in a school teaching district, to help with legislative, perhaps some support or recognition in that area. Because a lot of times the student teacher comes in and they're basically to fill in for the classroom teacher. I've had the cooperating teacher, they say, I'll see you in June. They see the teacher one day, or they will actually co-teach. And I think that's another one of the models that doesn't work very well is co-teach. So I would ask Duncan to maybe have some kind of standard, some kind of format across the country that what are the standards for student teaching? What are the standards for mentoring, working with these new teachers? Because it's really all over the place.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I just wonder, so do you find a certain number of years is best when it comes to mentoring to part of the teacher, and also
Well, research
personality?
shows that the first 5 years of teaching is considered, you're still a new teacher for 5 years. And some, of course, they're always learning. After 30 years, I'm still learning and so forth. But the basic rule of thumb is 5 years is considered still the new teacher level.
And then what about personality? How do you when a mentor to pair them up with someone, do you look at personalities at all to make sure that?
I personally don't. Usually that's done by the principal because they do the interviewing. They're usually the gatekeepers for the new employee, knows the personality and so forth of their staff and also of the new teachers. So in some districts, the principal makes the match. In some districts, the department chair might make the match. And sometimes the matches don't work. In fact, a lot of the programs I'll talk about, they have to have an X procedure. How do I get out of a bad match? This match is not working.
That would be a growth mindset.
Yeah. But there has to be a clear exit for both the new teacher,
right,
as well as for the mentor teacher. You know,
yeah.
Maybe one thing is, oh, this is fine. My favorite story is I talked to 3 new teachers at the end of the school year. How did your mentoring program go? Well, it was great, but we had to fake problems. We had to pretend we were having bad problems at school. So our mentor felt good. So our mentor could feel warm and welcome and have a role to play. I said, so you spend time trying to create fake problems so your mentor would feel good to help you out with the fake problem.
Right. That's an interesting concept.
Oh, yeah, and then I put that out on our website, through our ASCD Mentoring and Learn website. I said, I'm baffled. What do you think they really were saying? What was really taking place here? We had to fake a problem as a student teacher or new teacher to make the mentor feel good.
Right.
Then I felt, did I make a mistake? Was my mindset wrong?
Well, I think if you just look at policy in general, and we talked about Secretary Duncan, but just in general, it would be, I don't know, I would kind of challenge. I would challenge my legislators to have more of a growth mindset. It's kind of this not grow mindset, which is kind of popular, but make everybody else grow to meet their, to meet their little box. So for me, I think that. We need to push people to improve, but how do we push people? How do we get them there? And I think for everybody, it's unique. So when you have mentoring in schools and they go to have matches, whether the principal makes the matches or the department chair or the mentor trainer or the mentor leader, I think it's important to put people in the right combination where they're going to kind of feed off of each other.
Right.
So, Richard, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So I've been given the get off the air signal. So I will conclude it. Thank you, Lavana, for your leadership and emceeing, and Matt Mingle, our co-moderator, and Chris Tinkin back in Jersey. And everybody who came up and got interviewed impromptu, thank you. Ed Therapy happens every 2 weeks. We have all different topics, and hashtag Ed Therapy is our handle, our feed. And with that, I will say good night and see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.